Fabulous. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Derek's live chat show. It's a Thursday. The sun's out in Guildford, so that's absolutely fantastic. Just a couple of reminders for me before we go into things. These are my favourite biscuits, and they're called Time Outs. And the reason they're my favourite biscuits is whenever we're negotiating, whenever we're influencing, whenever we're in conflict with anyone, it's just so helpful to take a break, take a time out. The Americans at Harvard call it going to the balcony. That's from William Ury, Getting to Yes, just taking a break. Now, I notice that most people don't take a break, don't take a time out when they're making decisions. Even speakers, when they're asked what their price is, they don't think about taking a stop and wondering about what else you can get into the package if you have to reduce your price, what you can upsell, downsell, and there's just tons of things, books, CDs, and we all got things that we can do. So I keep timeout bars with me just to remind me to take a break. And can I advise you with your friends and your family and with your loved ones, when someone says something that perhaps they didn't mean, the answer is not to react, not to overreact, and maybe just don't say anything. Think about it for 5 or 10 minutes because they probably didn't mean it, and you may be never forgiven for saying something on the spur of the moment. So that's one of my best tips for everybody. Now, before I introduce John Hotowka, who is the resilience speaker, and it's very kind of him to come on the show for the second time after his magic trick blew everybody away, I just wanted to mention this book on resilience is a book that I spent quite a lot of time going through when I was writing my book on conflict, because when you're in conflict, you need to be resilient. And it is a good book. And I did, shall I say, lift a few things from it when I was studying it carefully. And when I was working for Barclays, I wasn't as resilient as some of the people I worked with. And I don't know whether I thought they were thick-skinned or I had higher emotional intelligence and took things personally. But I read Carnegie's book several times, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And there's a few pages in there which give you fabulous advice. So John's been studying resilience for a long time. And John, welcome back to the chat show. And tell us all about resilience from Bradford.
All about resilience from Bradford. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me on the show. And I have been studying it for a long time, since about 3:12 this afternoon. So here we go. I'm one of those speakers that just picks things up straight away and then just chats. So resilience. Fantastic. So there are two aspects. There are two aspects to resilience, the way I see it. One aspect is the ability to bounce back from adversity. And the other aspect is the one that fascinates me. And it's the ability to keep going no matter what life throws at you. You know, when we feel, oh, I can't go anymore, it's finding that courage to keep going. And that's what I'd like to focus on in my little presentation this evening. So before we talk about the steps or some of the tools to keep going, what we need to understand, first of all, is the emotional cycle, the emotional journey when we experience change. Because recently we've been going through a heck of a lot of change, and there's a lot more change to come. So let's just have a quick chat about the emotional journey. And this was research that was carried out by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross way back in 1969. And she studied the grief cycle. So when people experience grief, what was the emotional journey that they went through? And there were 5 stages. And this emotional journey, psychologists have found out it's the same journey that we go through when we experience change. So the first aspect is shock. So first of all, we're shocked about the change. And if you think about it, when we experienced lockdown, the whole nation initially went into shock. It was phenomenal. It wasn't just an individual person. It was everybody all at the same time, the shock of it all. The next thing we experience is denial. So this can't be happening. You've got to be joking. This can't be going on, surely. And then we experience anger. And with anger, that tends to be, that we play the blame game there. And what I mean by blame, first of all, we start saying, well, it's their fault, it's China's fault, it's the government's fault, it's good. And then all of a sudden it switches around to, well, I should have done this, shouldn't I? I should have saved up enough money so that I should have done that or the other. We play that blame game and we're angry. And then the next thing is despair. So there's no hope. This is it. I can't go on. I can't see any future. It's all bleak. It's the end. And then finally, we get to acceptance. And acceptance doesn't mean that we're happy about the situation that we're in. It just means that we are accepting the situation that we're in. And the trick is when we experience change and we go through this emotional journey, I can go backwards and forwards with those emotions. The trick is to get to acceptance. I like to call it accepting, because accepting is better than acceptance, but some people like acceptance. So the trick is to get to acceptance as quickly as possible, because when we get to acceptance, that's when we start to relax. We start to have a little more clarity, at least clarity of thought. We might not know which direction to go in or what action we're going to take, but at least we tend to be a little more relaxed and have peace of mind. So here are some ideas of how to get to acceptance as quickly as we possibly can. And by the way, even when we get to acceptance, we can still go back to anger and denial and everything else. So here are some ideas to get to acceptance. First step, express your feelings. So if you feel like having a really good laugh, just let it out. I mean, if you're having to give somebody some bad news or something, I suggest you don't do it at that moment. But if you will fancy a good laugh, have a good laugh. If you fancy crying your eyes out, I'm a crier. I will cry my eyes out. There is nothing wrong with it. Even for men, there is nothing. Don't do it in public. Find somewhere private to do it. But as long as you're not blubbing all the time, this is just to get that emotion out. Because if we don't get that emotion out, we don't express the emotion, we just feel overwhelmed. And that's another thing about overwhelm. Quite often, if we cry, we can release that tension. Or you can do what my next door neighbor does. He shouts. He gets really angry. And I caught him the other day shouting in his garden. And I said, "Are you all right?" He said, "No, I'm fine. I'm just frustrated." And he's now soundproofed his shed so he can go into the shed and have a good shout. But as long as you make sure that the people who are around you know that you are not expressing that anger, that shouting or whatever at them, it's okay to express that feeling. So express your feelings. Next, express gratitude. Now, it's difficult under these circumstances sometimes to find things to be grateful for. But there's always something to be grateful for. And I'm not suggesting for one moment that we ignore the problems, the issues, and the challenges that we have. All I'm saying is that we also need to focus on what we are grateful for. I want to say focus on what we're grateful for. I'm suggesting you do this at least twice a day for a couple of minutes, once in the morning, once at night, during the day if you can, for a couple of minutes at a time. And when you express gratitude, don't just think to yourself, yes, I'm grateful for my car. I am grateful for my books. Do your best to feel the gratitude if you possibly can. Why am I suggesting that you feel the gratitude? Because if you can feel it, then in our brains, we secrete two hormones, dopamine and serotonin. And they are the two happy drugs that our bodies naturally create. They're free and they're legal. We can use as much of those as we want. So by releasing those happy drugs, it allows us to it helps us to raise our spirits. But it also gives us that clarity and that calmness as well. Next thing, surround yourself with supportive people. Supportive people. Now, Derek and I were members of what we call mastermind groups. A mastermind group or a peer support group, call it whatever you want, is a group of people who get together periodically to give each other support. So in my case, I'm a member, I'm one of 6 people in my mastermind group. And we normally meet once every 2 months. And we meet for a whole day. And we discuss our challenges, our issues, our opportunities, and we give each other that moral support. But under these circumstances, during lockdown and for the foreseeable future, we don't meet once every 2 months, and we don't meet for a whole day. In our case, we now meet on Zoom once a week, and we meet for just maybe an hour and a half. But we are there for each other. We discuss our issues, our challenges. We give each other a boot up the backside if we need to. The thing is, we do not have to be alone. We need to surround ourselves with supportive people. If you can't surround yourself with a group of supportive people, find one other person who you can talk to periodically, a buddy of some sort. And then last and by no means least, step up and step onwards. Step up and step onwards. I had a realization a couple of weeks ago, and the realization was, we've all been through crises before. It might be a relationship crisis. It might have been a health crisis. It might have been a financial crisis. We've all been through crises before. We've not been through this crisis, but we've all been through crises before, and we've survived them. How do I know that? Because we're here on the planet. And how did we get through? I was thinking about that. We all have those days when we're in bed, we're in bed of a morning, and we think, I don't want to get out of bed, because if I get out of bed, the world's just going to beat me up. It's safe in here. I don't want to get out there. But somehow we found the courage. Somehow we found the strength to step up. And we took one step onwards. Just one step. That's what we did. It might have been difficult, but we took one step onwards, and then we took another step and another step. See, the thing is this: if we stay still, we stay in bed and we don't do anything, and we withdraw completely, then nothing can happen to us, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. We just stay in the place where a situation that we don't like. But if we take one step forward, step up, and take one step onward, and that step might be to reach out and ask for help. That step might be to help someone else. It might be to do a podcast. It might be to get involved with social media, whatever it might be. That means that we are getting out there. And when we mix with people, ideas will occur to us of what we can do. Opportunities will occur to us. We'll meet people that might give us ideas of how we can continue and carry on forward, and then ultimately achieve the goals that we want to achieve. So we need to step up and step onwards. And for me, I don't know about you, but over the weekend, I saw he saw The Darkest Hour, Winston Churchill. And this was the quote at the end, and it inspired me. It says, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. It is the courage to continue that counts. Step up, step onwards."
Fantastic, John. Can I congratulate you on those slides as well? They were...
it's a rubbishy background, but I wanted something light.
We're not having any negativity on this program. It's a brilliant background, and the slides were terrific. And you raised a few issues there. I was very interested in your take from the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross model, which we all know, well, lots of people know for grief. And I agree with you. The quicker you can get through that, the better. And the friends that you have and people that help you through it, and the mindset as well, can be really, really beneficial. Yeah, being grateful, getting out of bed. This helps me getting out of bed, and it is coffee and nothing stronger at that point. It's usually caused by too much of the other stuff before I went to bed, but absolutely. And that was brilliant. Absolutely terrific. And we have got time for questions if we do this in two sections. And I think everybody's actually unmuted. So if there's any questions or any thoughts for John, fire away. Kevin O'Connor from Chicago.
And how did you do those slides?
Oh, right. Okay, fine. So I found a JPEG. Right, you're on Zoom. So you know that you can put your own backgrounds on Zoom, yeah?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the backgrounds are JPEGs. So what I did, I got a JPEG, which was a blue background or whatever background you want to choose. And then I went into a photo editor and I put text on the slides. So for instance, let me just go through this again. Right, so that's the slide that we're on at the moment. So this is one slide, and now this is a separate slide, and now there's another. This is a completely separate, and these are all separate slides.
But they're in your background under virtual background, aren't
Yeah.
they?
So I uploaded them all in order in choose virtual background.
Oh.
So I have the box open for the settings for the virtual background, and as I'm speaking, I'm just clicking on the relevant slides.
Really changing your background at each time, but we don't know this. We only know this.
Well, you don't know because the main background, the blue, is
Yeah.
the same one all the way along.
Yeah, yeah. And is the photo editor, is that something special?
No, I don't think so. I'm using photo image editor, but I would imagine any photo editor software that allows you to put text on an image would do it.
Kevin, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it in Keynote or in PowerPoint if you want to.
Yeah, or PowerPoint.
You have to be very careful though that having got the background, you can do it and keeping the same background. Just to be careful it doesn't go into reverse. That's the only difficulty. So you need to practice. Duncan's sitting there with a grin on his face. He's always done it before.
No, I was just going to say Canva, I guess, could be another option for doing that using Canva, because you can create JPEG images on Canva. So just creating a series, getting a thumbnail and using that as a virtual background on Canva could be another option.
Thank you.
John, I've got a question for you.
Yes.
I read that somewhere that when faced with change, 80% of people's initial reaction is negative. Do you know if that's true or not?
I don't know. I'm not doing any research, but I was thinking the other day. I mean, not the other day. I've thought for a little while. I think we get into a habit of, if we dislike change, then all of a sudden, if there's change, we experience change, we dislike it anyway. So what I mean by that is, have you ever had a cut on your finger?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get a fresh cut on your finger, and then all of a sudden you touch it and it hurts. You touch it and it hurts. And then after a while, you'll touch it and you'll still retract, but it doesn't hurt because it's healed. But you've got into the habit of, oh, it hurts. And then you realize, no, it doesn't hurt, I'm all right. I think what happens, and this is purely conjecture, and it's an observation, I think what happens is that because a lot of people dislike change, and it's natural, by the way, to dislike change, and I can go through the science of that if you wanted, because we get into the habit of disliking change, and then whatever happens, we just dislike it. And I think also it's not that we dislike the change, it's fear. Because when we experience change, the kind of thoughts we have are things like, right, can I do this again? Am I good enough? Do I really have the talent? So we go into that fear mode. And it's very natural to go into fear mode because of the way our brains operate. Our brains are all about, well, our brains, there's an area of the brain called the amygdala, which is our instinct for survival. And when it comes to survival, far better to be hesitant and cautious than it is to be bold and brave. So our knee-jerk reaction is to be hesitant and cautious, to be fearful.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting over recent weeks, things which we've been holding out and resisting for a long time have almost become the norm. You kind of think like GP appointments.
Oh yeah,
as a classic example.
We are quick to adapt.
Yeah,
John, that was fantastic. Thank you for that. And people get hold of you at johnhotowka.com, don't they?
No, they get hold of me at Hotowka. So you can see my name, hotowka.co.uk.
Okay, fabulous. And will you stick around and do a little magic trick for us?
Yeah, I will. I'll stick around, do a little trick.
You're very kind. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Tell me when.
Yep.